discuss the bylaw 18-026, which is the Bluestone Ranch Country Residential Area Structure Plan, and bylaw 1827, which is the amendment to the land use bylaw from rural agriculture to group country residential, which is approved by the area structure plan. So I have my agenda report is included in your package. That will go through the highlights of that, and then if there's any questions with council afterwards, please to answer any questions. The Bluestone Ranch Area Structure Plan was first submitted to the county in May of 2017. Since that time, the Area Structure Plan has been amended to reflect comments received from most external agencies and county administration. The Area Structure Plan is to allow for 38 country residential parcels, which would be 2 or more acres in size, and 1 30-acre parcel. The Area Structure Plan, as presented, includes reports on the geotechnical evaluation, environmental assessment, transportation, stormwater management, and preliminary soils analysis, which are all requirements that we have under the municipal development plan for an area structure plan. The parcel currently is zoned for rural agriculture, and it has an irrigation pivot on it. The lands would be considered high-quality agricultural land in accordance with the county's land use bylaw. In the southwest portion of the quarter section, there are currently 6 acreages that are zoned for country residential, and that were subdivided out in 1998. There was a 40-acre historical subdivision there, and so in 1998, that particular landowner was able to subdivide out 6 acres in the remaining agricultural land. So there's 20 acres in the area down here right now. So 20 acres was divided into 6 parcels, and then another 20 was consolidated back into the agricultural title. The proposed plan meets all the requirements of an area structure plan as outlined in section 2.6.2.3 of the municipal development plan. As I mentioned before, the proposal does include a traffic impact assessment and stormwater management plan that were deemed acceptable to the county. The proposed application does not comply with the policies as contained in the municipal development plan. The MDP includes locational criteria for any country residential development. And typically when we're looking at the municipal development plan, it's section 6.3.3 that states that country residential may be restricted on development on lands that is considered for good quality agricultural lands as defined by the land use bylaw, or that exceed 20 acres in size of farmable land. Exceptions to the policy may apply when taking into consideration development on parcels adjacent to hamlets, recreational areas, poor non-agricultural areas, geotechnically sound cliff edges, cut-off parcels, and those areas that are adjacent to urban areas, like a city or a town. The proposed application is not adjacent to any of the above areas, and the proposal does not appear to meet the intent of the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, which directs municipalities to limit the fragmentation of agricultural lands and their premature conversion to other non-agricultural uses. This is in section 8.2 of the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. Within the plan itself, there are some areas that have been deemed a concern to administration. One in particular is the geotechnical report, which is in Appendix A of that document. And the engineer did identify that this area does have a high water table, which can lead to issues with further development of the properties and the installation of septic systems. The layout of the plan area is also not an ideal setup for a rural setting, as it only has one access into and out of the proposed subdivision for the number of lots that are proposed. This application was sent to external agencies for review. Comments were received from Alberta Transportation, the Coldell Fire Chief, Alberta Health Services, and the Oldman River Regional Services Commission. Alberta Transportation did not have any concerns with the proposed bylaw and any impacts that it would have on Highway 512, which is the nearest secondary highway. Alberta Health Services did have some concerns with regards to the high water table and the proposed individual private septic systems. They were concerned on the the effect of all those septic systems on in one area, and that there could be such failures of such systems. They suggested the consideration of a communal wastewater system or private systems are a place that the developer would have to follow a more rigorous review process in order to ensure that there wouldn't be any impacts on a larger scale. The Coaldale Fire Chief had concerns with the access to water in an event of a fire and the lack of a fire system in the subdivision. An option they provided was that the residences could have indoor sprinkler systems. And just for council's awareness, we have done this in some other more recent subdivisions in the county to do indoor sprinklers because of the concerns with having year-round access to a fire pond. The Oldman River Regional Services Commission, Steve Hardy, did make some comments, and they included that the application does not conform to the Municipal Development Plan or the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, concerns with the lot layout and design, and the use of high-quality agricultural land. And Steve will, if he wants to, will have the opportunity to speak and further discuss his comments. The proposed bylaws were advertised in the November 27th and December 4th issues of the Sunny South News and sent to landowners within 1 mile of the proposed area. The county received four phone calls with regards to the proposed bylaw. One caller just requested additional information but didn't have any concerns. 2 callers had concerns with the proposed bylaw, mainly with regards to the impact to adjacent agricultural operations. 4th caller expressed concerns with the impact to adjacent residential landowners and the high water table in the area. After this report was completed, 2 letters were submitted by two adjacent landowners expressing concerns with the proposed amendments, and they were handed out to council. One was from Niedermeyer Farms, and the other was from Brenda Bezoin. With that, the administration, we have provided a recommendation to refuse the applications based on the policies of the Municipal Development Plan, and also that council should consider the concerns as addressed by the adjacent landowners. I know there are a number of people here in the gallery wishing to speak today, so that concludes my report to council. Are there any questions at this time?
Questions of Hillary? Okay, thanks very much, Hillary. So this time we'll turn it over to the public section. So before we do that though, we've got a couple of ground rules. Please address all your comments to council and clearly give your name for the records, and stick to the topic as much as you possibly can. Otherwise, we'll have to kind of rein you in a bit. Don't get talking about subdivisions down the road 4 miles. So keep your comments confined to those strictly impacting the situation. Okay, so with that, I will ask, and please come up to the, have a seat down, or you could use one of the microphones. So I will ask for those in opposition to the project. Yes.
Do you want to hand out the?
Sure, I can do that for you.
Good morning, Councilor. Thank you for allowing me to present this verbal presentation. This is a copy of my speaking notes. I'm Dr. John Gears, Johannes Gears legally. My wife Shani's in the crowd. This is regarding the bylaws proposed. We'd like to express our concerns about the proposed bylaw amendments and development. We do not feel that the proposed bylaw amendment and development should be approved due to multiple issues. We're the owners of Lot 6, which is the northernmost lot, which would be, I believe, the most affected by the proposed development. Excuse me. And would be significantly negatively impacted by the redevelopment of the subject properties. We do not feel that highly productive farmland should be taken out of the county for county residential development. There are multiple options in the county for agriculturally marginal land to be used for residential purposes, and this land should not be taken out. It produces food, and I think we need to promote good agricultural land. We're concerned that the potential acreage owners will be unexpectedly surprised by the cost of building on this development. Development and house building costs are significantly higher on this land due to multiple factors. We built a property on this land 3 years ago. The water table was unexpectedly high. We excavated 3 feet and found water, so it was great for fresh water supply. But it's not good to build a basement, a footing, or anything to that effect on. So our engineer, due to concerns of seepage, slumping, foundation collapse, required us to put 51 screw piles down underneath our house and footings, which was over $30,000 in extra cost. We were advised by our builder at that time that we probably should look at a different acreage, but at that point we invested a significant amount of time and energy and money in it. So we spent a car and buried it into the ground and put down 51 screw piles. So, but that cost is significantly more than what a normal house would have to be in that area. And since the water table in the entire development is at least that high, this would provide a significant negative economic disadvantage to someone building. And I think that the possibility of people actually wanting to build on this proposal is very low because of that extra cost. So I don't think it'll work, but that extra cost will mean that the proposal is likely economically not viable and would probably doom the entire development and remove it from agricultural land. We had purchased the land with the expectation that this would not be subject to crowding and development on the adjacent land. The land and all of the surrounding acreages that are previously approved in development have no back neighbors or development, which preserves the rural nature of the land. And we want to preserve this as it provides a significant nuisance to us and our ability to enjoy our chosen rural environment. We expected that the agricultural land had the maximum amount of subdividing that was allowed and appropriate. Therefore, we never did expect that any additional development was going to be allowed in this property. Construction of utility infrastructure is also likely to cause significant visual nuisance for us, and our sightlines in the property would be compromised, and this was never supposed to occur in a rural area. We're also concerned that the 38 proposed units of housing with attendant sewage production would negatively affect groundwater, subsurface water quality and quantity, particularly if there are leaks in the systems, which would be expected since it's a man-made system. Unlike agriculture, whose use of water is seasonal, rural housing water use and production of sewage effluent is year-round. The volumes of water and sewage effluent would be significantly increased and probably aggravate downstream water quality and overwhelm groundwater handling capacity. And unfortunately, my acreage is downstream of all of this development, except for a portion of the northern part. The proposed development significantly impacts, stresses, and likely would overwhelm the available county resources in the area, as the roads would be unable to cope with the expected volumes of traffic from the building and living in this proposed development. Previously, the county has not been able to improve or maintain the roads. Every winter, we have a significant problem with snow drifts on 20-5, and it typically takes 3 to 5 days for that to be cleared. We often have to park up and walk a quarter to a half a mile, which makes it interesting when I have to go deliver a baby at 2 or 3 in the morning because my road's not plowed out. So I don't think the county is going to be able to maintain that road unless it proposes to put a lot more money into the road development. The roads would need significant rehabilitation, build-up, construction, and maintenance to an appropriate robustness to handle the increased traffic loads that would be inspected, and this would be a significant new cost to the county. For the reasons stated, we're absolutely opposed to the development of these lands beyond their present agricultural use. In the event, however, that further development were to be approved, there's also difficulties, although it doesn't show it on the map, but they have a proposed access road which parallels our northern fence, and the road is no more than 15.5 meters away from our fence. This will cause significant nuisance to our property, noise and light, which is not tolerable given the expected traffic load from the infrastructure build-out, house and outbuilding construction, service industry traffic, and residential traffic. I would anticipate this would include potentially hundreds of construction vehicles, heavy and light vehicles, as well as residential and owner traffic, which would likely amount to hundreds of trips a day going up and down a road that's just a few feet away from our house. This is a huge nuisance to our home and is not acceptable. If the development is approved, the access road needs to be moved north hundreds of feet, and robust noise and light pollution mitigation structures need to be installed before the project even starts. The property plan is inadequate in handling this concern, as our home is located at an angle to the property line, and raised above grade due to the water table concerns previously mentioned. And this would have vehicle headlights shining directly into our living area at all hours of the night, which is an intolerable nuisance. The noise pollution will also be constant due to the anticipated traffic flow and is not acceptable to us, as it would be a constant nuisance, and it prevents our enjoyment of a quiet country residence. We do not feel that bylaw 18-026 is required, as we did not request or need to change our land zoning. We do not feel that the proposed structure plan has merit as a development. The plan is not appropriate use of this high-value agricultural land and raises multiple problems for neighbors, particularly us, and the county, which are not balanced by needs or financial benefit. Any questions?
Council, any questions? Any questions from council? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
So, I'm not as organized as Dr. Gears is. I don't have a copy for you. But I did write something down because I get thrown off. I'm not naturally a public speaker, but I hope to address you as I've addressed council more times, but here we are. I'm Will Slerland. I'm an adjacent landowner and a farmer, and I've been doing that since '81. I've been in that area that long. As you can see, my land is directly north of the proposed division. We have 120 acres there, and we also have 160 acres across the highway, across Highway 512, which you cannot see there, but coming to oppose one of these things again, I feel like a drowning man. I'm one of the only farmers kind of still actively intensive livestock right there, right? And I feel like I have to always come back to my own rights. Well, we're in the county. You want to live in the city, go to the city. That's my, but I'm going to sputter right to the bitter end. If you're going to flush me out, go ahead. It seems we're always confronted with residential encroachment in one form or another, and it seems like all of a sudden the minimum distance separation doesn't count. When they want to develop something, they can go right across the fence. When I want to develop something, I have to stay half a mile away from them. Figure that out. Doesn't work in my books. Okay, I understand there was a public hearing, a public open house in June regarding this development. Sorry that I missed that, but that time of year I do have more things to do than to read the paper. In fact, if it were not for a kind neighbor, I would not even be aware of this meeting. And yes, Hillary did phone me for an address change. She couldn't find my address. I said, well, what address do you have? You have box 83 in Coaldale. That was my dad's address when he lived in Coaldale. How did my tax assessment ever get to me if I can't be notified? I was not notified until November the 30th of this hearing, of this development. Now, I did read in the notes that the developer had indicated that he would reach out to Niedermeyer's and Slerland's, but he did not. It was thanks to Hillary. They have not notified me of any of their intentions, and I'm right against his place. Why not? Well, you have suspicions. See, the next address they came up with was a rural route address. Although we've had that for quite a few years. Pick up the mail there on 20-5, right at the corner. But that was changed last year. And even if I did not, which I do believe I did, submit an address change like I did to all other people, I would have submitted one to the county as well. But even if I did not, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. This meeting was in June, and they forwarded my mail until September. So why did I not get notified, even of a public meeting? Okay, but wait a minute. The proposal to the county was in 2016. Public open house was June 17. Mail forward was till September 18. And that assuming that the county did not get the address change notice. Sorry, I'm overlapping here. All of the information that you have today portrays the interest of this proposed development and none about the effect it has on others. And I'm here to portray my interest, or rather, my disinterest in this development. Although I did see one diagram where they show off-site contributing area, and that was only to the south and to the east, but I'm north. So I kind of tried to break it down into points. Point one I want to address is the area structure plan. Most towns and cities, they have to annex surrounding land before they can push the farm around. Well, I'm sorry to say, the county doesn't apparently have a plan. Well, why not? If this is what you want to turn into a residential zone, annex it. Do the right thing. And take it and give us all an opportunity. There will be more reasons why I say that, not for self-interest, but I'll come back to it later. The site-specific. There are roads, drains, water storage, and sewer on the same site. Okay, now I'm saying if you would make an area structure plan, if you study the land, there's a lot of low spots in that area. North, south, east. And we have to put in a drainage system for that. And another point I have is this is already a subdivided quarter section. So it's against your own rule. Now, I have one more question. I don't know if the county is able to answer it. Why is there the lot between the existing development, they have a strip of land there, and the proposed development, there's a strip in between there. And now I question, what is the reason for that? Is this some down the road intent to come back and say, we need another development permit? Why do they not want to live right next door to their own development? Why are they leaving a space in between that? I don't know the acreage, the amount of acres, but to me, why do they not propose right up to their own fence line? That would drain another big low spot that drains into mine. And that brings me to the next point I have, the engineer's findings. Engineers found sand. Yeah, we knew that. It's been there a long time. Seepage. We know that. And I'll give you an example. I have a pivot on my place. I don't know if you can see it on that land, but if you go to the right there, that's the pivot corner. Technically, it doesn't get water. Pivot's been up there for quite a few years. This year we had corn in that area, and except for the very outside rows, maybe they were wilted, but the rest of that pivot corner was indistinguishable from what was under pivot for crop yield. How is that possible? Well, the water's coming from underneath. That's how bad the sand seepage is there. A few years ago, the county decided to move the culvert, the drainage ditch, from the other side of the road to my side of the road. And they put a culvert in across at an angle, and they had some greenhorn running the high hole, cutting the ditch without any surveying or anything. But that ditch seeped at 2 feet level. That ditch was wet all year through, just from the seepage coming out of that sand layer. That's how much water is in that area. It's bad. Now, I've been putting drainage in, and we do due diligence to control our low spots. Now, they're proposing a few lakes. I'm getting ahead of myself. I gotta stay with the planning otherwise. Another comment I wanted to make is now they diverted the water from the residential side there from Vista Meadows. You see that with the red line. That's one reason why we were here at the county office 20 years ago. And none of those councilors are here anymore, but the subdivision is, and we can live with it. But nonetheless, now they were complaining about water in a wet year, that they get the drainage past their houses. So to protect them, they diverted the water to my side of the road. Well, I'm only a farmer, it doesn't matter if I flood out. That's a nasty comment, but that's how I feel. That's why the water can come to my side. I'm gonna take you a little farther about if the drainage now comes down my side, no, I'll leave that for you, I'll stick my paper. Plan to seal the lakes. They planned a few lakes in their subdivision. And that is one reason why not? What's wrong with this little area between the existing and the proposed? Because that's the major low spot right there. They need to drain that one out as well. And I've spoken to this owner, last owner, previous owner. You know, this changed hands a few times. All you need to do is dig a sump hole and pump that low spot out, and you could farm the whole property. But it's agriculture, and no, it's easier. It's better to, let it deteriorate instead of be proactive and do something and keep it so you can farm the whole area. It's just my gut feeling. And why do these things happen? They plan to seal the lakes, and one of the engineers decided that soil, the subsoil, was good enough that they could seal a lake. Well, I don't believe it. I really don't. I've been in that area often enough that you can't hold water in a sand pit. It just doesn't work. You can't keep it out or you can't keep it in. So they would need to lower the water level year round if they want to get rid of the seepage. So you're talking going down quite a ways. But then all of a sudden, now they can pump. That was part of the proposal. They're going to put a pump in for their floodwater. Strange that now they can do it. Now it's not agriculture anymore. And then I'd like to give the example of Vista Meadows. They also have a lake right there on the very north tip. I'll put my mouse there. Oh, a little faster, right there's a lake. Well, for whatever reason, they put a lake there. Engineered, I imagine it was all engineered, up to specs, up to par. But if you go look there today, across the road from it, my land right there, I cannot drive there with a tractor. I get stuck. And why is that? Well, the water is right up to the edge of my soil. And where's the water coming from? Across the road, out of that lake. Seepage. I'm sure it was engineered. And yet, now last year the county went and put netting under that road to harden it up, because that road is soft, it's spongy as could be. Well, what do you expect through a lake? Now I have a simple solution. If you would dig that culvert down right into the drain ditch right there, lower that a foot, you'd get rid of a lot of that excess water. And then the farmer wouldn't get blamed for wrecking the road.
Well, Mr. Slingerland, you're touching on an issue now that Alberta Environment tells what we can and can't do, so.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
I just wanted to throw that in. This is how
Okay.
engineers come and can justify their own work, and they do. But this is proof that their engineering does not always live up to their specs. That's why I wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
Okay? We do try due diligence to avoid puddling, so we can farm every acre. And that is deteriorated into a swamp, and then come crying to you if they can't rezone it. Another point, wildlife. Now we should already be getting really excited, because wildlife, man, the wildlife habitat, we're improving it. Lakes are an ideal breeding ground for geese. It's a very safe zone for them. But the geese have become a plague in your county, our land. And you just watch, like last spring, it's heartbreaking to see the herds of geese coming out of that lake across the road into my new seeded barn. And you know how much a goose eats? Well, we were out there with the dog trying to chase them out. Of course, you can't run as fast as a goose can fly. Doesn't help much. but we're compounding that problem. We're still farmers, we still count in dollars and cents, not in mega dollars of divisions, and this is not compatible, I'm sorry, it's not a compatible land use. Okay? And we still like to see bushels per acre, and not our crops mowed down by the wildlife that are being bred in these lakes throughout the county. And in closing, the long and short of it is, I need this land base for my operation. It's my manure disposal area, and we haul our feed off of there. We've a lot of years I buy the straw crop off of this proposed agricultural land from the tenant who farms it, and I've been there for a lot of years. And at a point I just thought of mentioning something traffic, and I know Mr. Gears related to it. Traffic is not only related to this development, I realize that. But if from October to February, February is not a good time to do a traffic study on how many vehicles are going past. Like I said, we cross that Highway 512, or we have to pull onto Highway 512 quite often coming down that road to and from. You know what that's like? Today, to try and get onto Highway 512 with a truck or a tractor or some equipment, and then you stand there and wait, and the signal light goes on, and you go down the gravel again. Now, I realize, that some people don't know what it's like to drive anything slower than a Volkswagen, but, I'm in there with a truck and a tractor, and if you gotta go load, get your silage home, it's a couple hundred times, 100 times a day. You're trying to, and now the extra traffic, we already have Vista Meadows there, and then you're gonna ask for another 100 vehicles there, coming and going? Well, that's what we're up with. So I ask County to please consider tossing this one out and keep us in mind. And if you do decide to rezone the whole area, I'm sure all my neighbors, we could all get together and come up with a plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Brenda?
Good morning. I'm Brenda Bezoyan, and I have land, a number of parcels within a 2-mile radius, and that's why I believe I got 2 letters relating to this project. According to the county map here, so I'm just to the east, right here, and so I'm highly affected by this proposal, and that's why I'm here today. I am going to kind of go through the process of reading my letter so that all my neighbors and other people here know what I wrote to, and I'm just going to follow this, and once in a while I'll put in a few extra points of interest and go from there. So, okay, I'm writing this letter in regards to 2 letters I received from Lethbridge County, both dated November 28th. One letter addressing Desperado Flats and one addressing Brenda Bezoyan, informing me I am the adjacent landowner to the proposed bylaw amendment and area structure plan. Lethbridge County informing me of a public hearing to listen to concerns pertaining to the plan. Bluestone Ranch Country Residential Estate is proposing to rezone good farm land between Lethbridge and Coaldale, close to Highway 512 for agricultural and residential use. I would like to express my opinion against such intentions in our rural area. This objection is based on several important factors that I hope that council will take into consideration. Again, some of my points are going to be some of the same points that Mr. Slingerland brought up and Mr. Gears and some of the other neighbors that might speak after me, but loss of good producing irrigated farmland, and I think a lot of you guys can imagine this as your farmers in the area, and I like to consider myself an advocate for farmers and for farmland. Irrigated agriculture farmland is a limited product. We will not be making any more of it. Once changed to residential, it will not come back to farmland. Putting housing in this area means removing topsoil, adding gravel, concrete pavement, putting in houses, and garages, planting trees, and etc. All of these things result in no more agriculture products being produced on this land. Good farmland, now gone. That's was my first one on the list, and I'll stick by that all the way through this whole speech. That's my #1 issue, and I heard it brought up by Hillary too, which I'm really happy to hear that as a county, when she was speaking, almost as a county, that this is important to you guys too. Garbage. This is something that's gonna pertain especially to me due to that I'm east of the land. Our land is to the east of this proposed land, and with the prevailing west winds, that means the garbage ends up in our field. It's not if there will be garbage, there will be garbage. When there is garbage, it is funny how no one will take ownership of it. I 100% can speak of this experience. We have land east of Coaldale. Every year I go through the same thing with garbage. I go to the town and they say it's the developer's responsibility to clean it up. I go to the developer and they say it's the builder's responsibility. I go to the builder and they say it's a homeowner's responsibility. What am I supposed to do? Go to hundreds of homes in Coaldale and tell them to pick up their garbage that blew away from their yards. They will tell me where to go. But guess who's stuck paying to clean it up or has to pick it up? Now, I didn't want to go into this in detail on this letter, but I have in the past had to pay people, and I know for a fact, a couple times, $700 for 1 year to clean up just the garbage. Other times it's just myself and my kids will go out there and pick it up. But again, get it, this is east of the town of Coaldale. There's a lot of people that live there. But I don't want it in the combine. I don't want it stuck in the seed drill, plugging it up. But you know what? Again, and I don't think it's nothing against the people that town of Coaldale or anything. How do I get them to pick up their garbage? I don't have an answer for it. I truly don't. So, because nobody's going to take responsibility. So, my next point is to change our farming practices. Due to the location of residential houses to our farmland, we will be forced to change the way we farm our land. No more aerial spraying, which we used to use for insecticide. Ground sprayer will have to keep its distance from the fence line and residential yards, thus not spraying our own crop that will need it and turn a lower yield on crop close to the property line. Irrigating with a pivot sometimes does not drop water on the exact locations we mark. Wind can take water into neighboring property. It might be okay for the neighbor crop, but when it's a neighbor residence, they don't like it. Again, we would not be able to irrigate properly against the residential line. Other complaints from residents are dust, smell, bugs, noise, when seeding, tillaging, harvesting, large trucks on the road, manure, pivots, pumping units going, these are all farm-related topics. And I'm going to bring one that's not on the letter that Mr. Slingerland brought up, and it is the traffic on Highway 512. We do have to move our equipment around. My advice to him is, you just got to learn to own the road. You're bigger, they're going to move over eventually, but you will get a couple fingers and everything, but that's just the way you have to be. So people in this area, especially the country residentials, they don't understand it. Like, we have to get our work done too, so. My one subject here is drainage. In the proposed plan, they show storm retention ponds designed that are supposed to be good enough for 1 to 100 year floods. As we have seen in the last couple of years, these floods show up more often than before. These ponds are not large enough to hold back water, thus overflowing into neighboring fields where water has never run before, causing damage to other people's property because of changed plan in runoff that happens on development. I'm just going to speak here for a second. An example of this is right beside here, is I call it the Zoltan Gurgley. You guys know this little property here. At one time, the engineers designed a pond there. Well, if you would go back to pictures that were probably 5 or 6 years ago when we last had flooding, well, his whole property was underwater, never mind the little lagoon that they built, which I think was just a joke. And to think that that was engineered, and he paid somebody money to design that thing, was just a joke. So what difference is that going to be on this property now, what they engineer, that it's going to be able to hold back? I have no confidence in the engineers here of being able to design something that's truly gonna hold back the water, you know, so. And then once they do that, guess who's downstream of when that pond decides to go over? Mr. Slingerland and myself, because it will run north. And it's heading toward the Malloy Drain, which is heading toward Coaldale. That's where this water is gonna go. Another subject I'm just gonna talk about drainage here that you guys kind of shut down Mr. Slingerland on is the Alberta infrastructure, and that they're not allowing us to pump, or they gotta come involved whenever you're doing stuff on your land. We get calls, we start doing dirt work on our property, we get people phoning us, telling us we have to stop. And yet here comes this company, and they're just gonna totally change the way the water runs and everything, and how they're allowed to do that, and we're not allowed to fill a little hole, low spot, you know, that's better to make better agriculture land, and we're trying to improve our land. And yet somebody can come in here and do this to the land, it just doesn't make sense, so. I would like to express that I am not opposed to country residential, I am opposed to it at this location. There are lots of other things to consider when planning. The demand is not high for this kind of country residential. It took Vista Meadows 25 plus years to sell out, and I was trying to get the information on how long Vista Meadows been. Somebody even said 40, but this was before my time. Within the county, there are numerous other country residential sites available. There are better locations for country residential to be than on this bare corridor of irrigated farmland that has no features like water or coolings. The other thing is the town of Coaldale just annexed 9/4 of County of Lethbridge land that will be now, well, I wrote in here for residential, but it's for residential, industrial, commercial property. There was a lot of land that just went bye-bye to the town of Coaldale, and I think there's even access there for people. Go build over there and leave the land alone, so. Other things that the county should be considerate of about this property are, now I listed a number of things because I didn't think it was for me to go on forever about this, you know, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. And again, I was very happy to hear that Hillary brought up a lot of these concerns. Again, high water table, which Mr. Greer talked about, is a problem on this property. Soil type for sewer, I heard Hillary talk about that with all these above ground sewers. I'm bringing up no drinking water available. The county co-op has not given approval for this yet, and I would even question if they did, because I know I'm still waiting for some county water to come to my parcels, and for them to say, oh, you can allow this development to have it, and I'm not allowed to have it someplace else, could cause some controversy, you know. The next one here is management of weeds. Oh my gosh. How do I speak on that? It's nothing against the homeowners, but some people, when they come from the town and move to the country, they have no idea how to keep the weeds under control. I don't blame them, but they don't have the right equipment, they don't understand the chemicals, they don't even know what a hoe is, etc. So this is a very big, you're laughing, I know most people don't know what a hoe is anymore, but they don't. Get off your butt and go hoe your weeds and your trees, and etc. But overwatering, soil saturation was brought up again too by Hillary. I think that's a very big concern in this development, you know, again, doing to the sewer, the underground sprinklers that people are gonna bring in, the pavement, you know, and the concrete just doesn't help all that area. So quality of infrastructure, I brought that up. The paved roads I'm concerned with, and also I'm talking about the quality of infrastructure is, I think this pertains together, is ditches for drainage. I'm kind of like, why are they doing ditches? Why don't they do pipelines and stuff like that, etc.? But I think it all comes down to a cost. But the paved roads, I'm hoping that if something would ever come along, which I don't want it to, that the county watches the paved road. I think this has been a live and learn for you for other developments, like Broxburn there's some mistakes made. So, you know, all the stuff I'm bringing up, be considerate of it, do it the proper way. Light pollution. I find this, a lot of people don't, they probably wonder what is light pollution, but a good example for me is the Monsanto building on Highway 3. Like, that is light pollution, like unbelievable. I can't believe the highway department doesn't turn it down a little bit. I can see it for miles. So now, light pollution, even though they might not have the brightest lights in this development, it is still gonna be lights happening there, so. Fencing around the perimeter and type of fence. Should there be a fence up? I don't know, I didn't really see much in the proposal there, but I'm assuming they probably don't want a fence because they wanna be able to view our beautiful farmland, you know, and they don't wanna have a brick wall put up, but I would like a brick wall, so that I don't have to look at that, you know, and it stops my chemicals or whatever, irrigated water from going over to them. So, and stops their garbage from coming to me, so. Security, vandalism, more people just means more problems. Poor quality, again, a paved road, now this is to the development, same thing Mr. Slingerland talked about. That road, I don't know, yeah, it has issues, it's soft, you know, I'm concerned about that road, to be able to handle all that traffic. I'm gonna sum this up here, just giving you guys a few questions, you know, if you give this guy development, who's gonna stop us? Mr. Slingerland, Mrs. Niedermeyer, you know, I get it's a beautiful distance from the town of Lethbridge. I just don't know where, as a county, where do you draw the line, you know? That wouldn't be my ideal thing to do to the county, but, that's my question to you guys. When do we stop, you know, so. And, let's see what other notes I have. Okay. Yeah, I just left it off with counselors. I do not know what your long-term goals are for the county. My question to you is what do you want to do with the county and what do you want it to look like in the future? And that's everything. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Brenda. Any questions? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Mrs. Niedermeyer?
Is it okay if can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. All I want to say is the Niedermeyer family has been farming adjacent to this proposal for over 100 years. It's 101 years. I've been there almost 60 years. And the Niedermeyers have always felt agricultural land, you can never replace it. There isn't any more. And they've always felt that farming and agricultural land is sacred. Please consider that when you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last call. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? Those wishing to speak in favor?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Councilors of Lethbridge County. My name is Brad Schmidtke. Work with Stantec Consulting here in Lethbridge. And we've been hired by the landowner Bruce Plausteiner and Twins Investments to proceed with an area structure plan and submit for your consideration as well as land use redesignation from agricultural to country residential. Just a couple things by way of introduction, a lot of comments that did come up, and maybe after my presentation either I can sit and listen to questions or sit back down, whichever you like. I did want to thank the county in terms of administering the process on our behalf. It was great working with Hillary, Larry Randall, and Devin Tito as well. So I think the information sharing was really great, and I do appreciate that professionalism as we work through the process. So. And just get my fingers going here. So, really today is just about an introduction. I want to give you some high-level items that we talked about. Some of the items were brought up by residents in the area as concerns, and I hope I can touch on most of it as well with this presentation. I do also want to highlight, there was a few letters after our submission from the Alberta Health Services, Alberta Transportation, and Emergency Services, and I'll address those as well through this presentation. First of all, I'd like to talk about the existing conditions, though, in our project, in terms of what we've looked at with the land, setting a base framework of assessments. I'll speak about the land use concept. I do want to speak about the transportation and servicing that we're proposing at a very high level. I do want to speak to the stakeholder implementation that we've undertaken. And in the end, should we be successful, to talk about an implementation process to give everybody an understanding of what our intent would be. So I think everybody's pretty much aware where the location of our proposed Bluestone Ranch is at this point. It's approximately about 63 hectares. Really the purpose and vision in talking to Mr. Klaustheimer is to create a new country residential community adjacent to existing group country residential developments. So in the area here, we also have Mustang Acres up top, Vista Meadows. We do have a group country residential down here as well. And really, Bruce's idea is to provide that opportunity for country living in close proximity to highways and access to Lethbridge, Coaldale, and the Highway 3 commercial corridor. Existing conditions. I may try to address some of the comments that did come through as concerns as well. Of course, the existing conditions, we have a rural agricultural land use designation, and we're proposing to amend to group country residential. In our opinion, the border is already fragmented with 7 other separate parcels, which does make farming somewhat problematic. There are also 3 low-lying areas in the west area of the plan. These are intermittently wet and dry, and are currently classified as sort of intermittent wetlands that have to be dealt with as part of the development. There is an existing SMRID main line that runs through the site, and we've had consultation with SMRID on how that would be relocated. We are also surrounded by other country residential parcels, which kind of sits in the idea of keeping everything in close proximity. To the east of us, there is a gas well that is currently abandoned or not producing at this point. But we've reviewed the setbacks, and as well would also review these at detailed design as well if we were successful. One of the key on-site constraints in the southwest corner of the site during our phase 1 environmental site assessment, there was a disposal area that was probably from previous farming or other uses at the time. Really, that would be subject to further investigation in terms of how that's dealt with, and that's kind of recommended in our environmental report. From a land use concept, this is the proposal that we're going with. So the Klaustheiners currently own this area everywhere here. Looking at subdividing a large parcel there around the Klaustheiners. These are the other subdivided parcels along the Range Road. And at this time, we've looked at 38 parcels as a maximum that this site could hold. Typically at an ASP level, the intent is to show what could happen, but there's other studies and everything that would link into exactly what the final density of this site may look like in the future. So at this point, we're looking that we could get 38, but subject to further design and investigation, that number may change. This should be considered somewhat conceptual. As well, the lowest spot on the site, while there's some wetlands sort of out on the western fringe, this is actually the lowest point of land on the site, where we would plan to have a stormwater management facility. Currently, it is shown as a wet pond, but really subject to further design and other options may present themselves as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a wet pond, but that is where we would propose to have it. From a transportation perspective, just to speak about servicing, we have completed a TIA and consulted with Alberta Transportation. Now, this study doesn't speak to the status of the current highway or roads in the area, but it does speak to how the traffic can be accommodated on those roads, particularly at Highway 512. And what we found under full build-out and as well accounting for growth over the next 20 years, that the intersection of 512 and the Range Road here will operate sufficiently and under normal operating conditions. On the internal side of things, it is our intent and the developer's intent to use Lethbridge County standards. These roads will be paved. The intent is for an open ditch system that will drain to the new stormwater management facility. And to deal with groundwater conditions that we know are present on the site, we do plan to have sub-drainage systems running through the ditches and through swales on the backs of the properties. Once again, the intent here is that Lethbridge County standards will be followed, as well as engineering practices. From a stormwater management perspective, our on-site stormwater management system is comprised of grassland ditches and culverts that will flow to an on-site detention facility in the northeast of the site. This facility will discharge flows via a lift station and force main back to the SMRID canal. The pond will operate as a zero-release facility and only discharge under the conditions of the Molloy Drain Master Drainage Plan. And future grading design will accommodate off-site drainage and protect downstream lands. So I did hear comments and concerns, and I certainly can't speak to the history of what has been constructed in the area. All I can say is that at the time of detailed design, there are certain parameters and provisions that will allow for emergency storage beyond what is a 100-year event. And it would be our intent to size this pond accordingly for those emergency conditions. The Molloy Drain plan currently is quite clear that there will be no discharge until somebody says turn on the switch. So this pond has to be a sufficient size to hold the water and protect, as was put earlier, Mr. Slingerland to the north and Desperado Flats, which is downstream here. We have consulted with the SMRID as well about the idea of a lift station enforcement. Their concerns with any discharges that have to do with quality. The reason we proposed the wet pond facility is it does allow to let environmental concerns settle out in the pond, be stored appropriately, and then pumped off to the canal off peak after a storm event. Community servicing. Really the intent of this, the potable water and cistern systems that we proposed, we've been working on the plan now for 2 to 3 years, and we have spoken to the County of Lethbridge Rural Water Co-op. Initially, there did appear to be that there were licenses available. As of, I believe it was November 2017, I believe the Water Co-op had some concerns that they would not have capacity for the full build-out of this development at the time, as there were numerous licenses at play that people had not applied for, and they were unsure as to where that was going to go. In speaking to them recently, we do understand that they're still open to have the conversation of what sort of level of service they could provide at the time of detailed design and subdivision. In the interim, the plan is for cisterns, consideration for a water system, a water distribution system, but it would be sort of truck water delivery or whatever in the interim to start with. The fire suppression system, this has gone through a few iterations. Our pond had initially proposed that it could be sized accordingly for fire suppression as well. Just due to discussions that we had had with the county and emergency services over the last few years, we removed that from the plan. But considering a recent letter that we received from emergency services in Coaldale, I do want to speak to that the developer is open to discuss what sort of measures will be required at the time of the development to do proper fire suppression out here. And that could include on-site storage. While sprinklers are not obviously the most cost-effective component, that we're open to any idea and will discuss with emergency services moving forward. Raw water supply, not a problem obviously with the canal in the area. And we may end up using that for some irrigation purposes within the development. Sewage treatment. Due to the high water conditions, the on-site sewage treatment is challenging. Our initial studies do indicate that mounted systems could work in this area. Alberta Health Services did speak and send a letter in saying they had some concerns with the development and the potential density. And we've kind of taken that into consideration in our future design. Really, the final design of these septic systems is subject to further studies, and they would happen over the course of the next year or two to determine what sort of density, where these locations can be on site. The studies are quite comprehensive to make sure that we get them in the right location, but the soils do seem suitable for a soil-based treatment system. Did put some, there's often a concern of how these things tend to look like as well, and just some of the images I did found that you can actually turn these into some landscape areas, as you can see in some of the photos in terms of mounted systems, to deal with the effluents that is being pumped out of the storage tanks. In terms of stakeholder and public engagement, I've spoken briefly that we did speak to SMRID. We work with Lethbridge County, the County of Lethbridge Rural Water Association, Alberta Transportation, and had a public open house. We are aware of, there were some concerns with communication for the open house. I do want to speak to what we actually did in terms of that consultation. Initially, we actually did a hand delivery of Vista Meadows and all the surrounding residences in the area. We did post to the Sunny South News on two occasions, and there were a couple landowners that were left out. Mr. Slingerland was one of them, and Rose Niedermeyer was the other. I do believe that Bruce Plowsteiner had an opportunity to connect with Rose, so I'd have to let him speak to that if there's any concerns. And we did a mail out to Mr. Slingerland, but that mail was returned, and it appears that it's maybe part of that addressing component that was going on. The final piece of this public engagement is today's public hearing, and we're just here to provide this presentation and answer any questions that you might have. One of the big concerns that we had from the first speaker, Mr. Greer, I believe, was the neighboring residents. And we listened to him at the public open house, and our intent there, we have really not nailed down the dimension of where this road would be off the range road next to his residence, which is here. But what we did talk about is creating some sort of landscaping buffer that deals with drainage, provides some screening, provides certain aspects. And this by no means is a detailed representation of what's going to happen, but it's just trying to give you the sense of an effect of moving the road further away from the residents and providing some sort of green space and buffering that we can do at the time of detail design. In regards to sort of overall implementation, again, the landowner is requesting your consideration of our ASP approval and the land use bylaw redesignation. But beyond this, there's another series of detailed engineering designs and reports that need to be completed. Really, the ASP has set the framework, the baseline of what we need to work from going forward. We do have to work through all sorts of regulatory approvals, and work through subdivision applications, development agreements with the county, construction, building permits, and occupancy. So the process has been started. We feel we have created a great framework that we can build from, but certainly looking to provide more detail should we be successful today. And at the end, we just wanted to thank you for your consideration of our applications, and are available for any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions from council? Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Anyone else wish to speak in favor? And if that's all, anyone else wish to speak in favor? Does council have any comments or questions before we close? Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You kind of touched on the return flow from that development down there into either the St. Mary's Canal or the Malloy. But the way I look at it, you know, the Malloy is engineered for what it is going to be doing now, and if there would be extra water coming from that development down there, are we going to open Malloy or?
So currently, if I use the map, we do know that we have on-site runoff from the Niedermeyer property from Desperado Flats. And the natural course is for it to flow north through Mr. Singerland. So under the conditions of the Malloy drain, we would create a facility that collects stormwater at this point, would protect flooding downstream. But this would not discharge during a rain event. or when the Malloy drain was operating at full capacity. Under the current agreement, I believe with the county, SMRID, and Bird Environment, and a few others, this has to operate as a zero release, and that could be 2 days, it could be 3 days, it could be whatever it is. Until the SMRID has basically said you are cleared to discharge water downstream. So this pump system would remain off, it would not be pumping during a storm there.
Any other, Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For what I know, the irrigation districts, even if you have quite a large retention pond, before you can release it, they normally require some samples coming from that water before you can release it. Did they touch on that?
The SMRID did speak that they would want the water quality to be of normal agricultural quality in terms of what they get from runoff today. They didn't speak to specifics of sampling, but that our stormwater management facility at the time of detailed design would need to treat for contaminants and runoff that might come from more of an urban type setting. That would be something we'd have to look at later.
Any other questions? No other comments, no questions? Hillary, you got anything in closing?
I don't believe so. Mr. Chairman, we've heard a lot of information today. So if there are any final questions of council to me for the public hearing part, if not, I can answer anything pertaining to the plan at time of second reading.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, can I ask for a motion to close the public hearing? Hans? Those in favor of closing the public hearing? Those opposed? Carried. So what we've heard was a great deal of information from both parties. So we will take some time either later today or following this to make our decision. Thank you. All in favor?